peace, love, unity, safely having fun. Real hip hop for the people. It's an engagement. It's a demonstration. Using hip hop culture to get you activated. Let the people hear the bass, the vibration, the love, peace, unity, and watch them add on. It's a culture. It's not just rapping. It's not what we do. It's how we do it. We're doing it right here, Springfield Avenue, between Bergen and Plum. 24 hours straight, man. It's crazy.
Shit. We the people. The people of the culture.
Yeah, Ron Lawrence. Fire.
The hip hop culture.
Yo, we love rap.
Love
it. Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. But it's really about the culture.
Yeah, let them know how.
The realness. The culture.
Yeah. What up, man?
You know a hard head makes a soft behind. If I only knew my schoolwork like I knew them rhymes. Mom, upside my head, I'm trying to memorize every line. High power rap breaks, super rhymes. Deep into the culture, didn't even know it. Young entrepreneurs spitting bars like a poet in a rush to be mature behind bars when we blow it. In the bold as rappers too immature to outgrow it. It was more than just music, something next to breathing. I get giddy like a baby trying to spit while I'm feeding. The mic I be squeezing, dropping facts like I'm teaching. Leaking flows for the perfect beat seeking. Mama used to say, take your time, young man. But I'm trying to feel a light so you can see it when I tan. I'm like one I never ran, I'm a fan but never stand. Just take it backwards to the east, X and out the clan.
Holy integrated, having omnipresent, we are.
But no one stopped to think about the people.
Holy integrated, having omnipresent, we are.
But no one stopped to think about the people.
Pueblo Unido, grassroots Steve Biko. Rule number one, never forget the people. I live that, I get back. Heart all in it, no gimmick, straight facts. From the start, I'm the light from the dark. Born from black art, knew my part. Daddy gave me, mama made me. North raised me, hip hop saved me. For the culture now, for the black and brown. Harriet Underground, sun up to sundown. Till my people get out, north to down south, spread like word of mouth. While you cowards is hooded, we battle the bullet. Black lives to the fullest. Out here to the end, stronger together, that's the day we win.
Holy integrated, having omnipresent, we are.
But no one stopped to think about the people.
Holy integrated, having omnipresent, we are.
Yeah. But no one stopped to think about the people.
The legends before me are ones I want to get it like, but hitting quick hit different when hitting right. Mob ties, this thing of ours is birthrights. Who's next for the culture and them searchlights? Do it to it, this music, I'm trying to talk through it. Every plan on my own, I watch the lie do it. Airborne to Skiki, like a Wendell Pruitt. Trumpets blow, this song's here, melodic ruins. Think forward before they have to think for 'em. Boom bap, I talk that and live enormous. Informers when present and your boy performing, especially when them drums snap by Brian Lawrence. Do it all, that poet talker, the line crosser. Many hawk and I speak by your flying saucers. Make it worth it, I can't take no feeble offers. Signed, sealed, and delivered, and you know the offer.
Holy integrated, having omnipresent, we are.
But no one stopped to think about the people.
Holy integrated, having omnipresent, we are. Yeah, the people.
Yeah. What up? It's your boy Hakim Green, live and direct, the Hakim Green Show. Let me get my shit together. I'm all kind of raggedy right now. Let me get my green screen operation operating. Shit's crazy over here. What we got going on? Okay, there we go. Yeah, see, I'm representing 24 hours of peace, love, unity, safely having fun. What I just had on the screen was Real Hip Hop for the People, which is on the Hakim Green Show Music and Culture project that's dropping soon. Now we good. That's dropping soon. Shot live and direct at 24 Hours of Peace. And just to give you an idea of what that's all about, we're gonna go over to the 24 Hours of Peace Inc. website, so I can show you some of the acts that we've had in the past. some of the celebrities, some of the brilliant hip hop and R&B talent that we've had. Of course, myself and Mitty Baraka are the host. Do It All, who you saw in the real hip hop for the people video. We've had Lord, Tretch, Case, RL, Jadakiss, G Dep, DJ Qua, Tracy Lee, Coogee Rap, Lil Baby, Jacquees, Scarlip, DJ Taj, DJ Lil Man, Grav, Ivy Harrington was Miss New Jersey, Queen Moore does a spoken word every year. Gospel artist Denzel Cohen. We've had Fat Joe, we've had Talib Kweli, we've had KRS-One, we've had Rakim, Big Daddy Kane, we've had Fabulous, Queen Latifah, we've had it's so many artists. Like, we're running out of artists to actually have. It's like we're doubling up at this point. We had Jadakiss 2 years, 2021, and we had him last year. This year we're getting ready. August 28th, August 29th, over in the South Ward on Chancellor Avenue is where we'll be holding court for 24 hours straight, 6 p.m. on Friday to 6 p.m. on Saturday. You know how we do. 24 hours of peace, love, unity, safety, having fun, organizing the hip-hop community to push just that. And we've been doing that since 2010 to support the anti-violence work of the mayor, Ras Baraka. And we were doing that before he was the actual mayor. He was the South Ward councilman. And we would just, we had to use hip-hop, the power of hip-hop, for what it was intended, which is the elevation of our people and our community. Peace, love, unity, safety, having fun is the true ethos of hip-hop culture. So that's what we're pushing. That said, I got Mad-ism going down. I'll also be doing a Mad-ism cipher as the official after party for this year's this year's 24 Hours of Peace. So we have 24 Hours of Peace on August 28th, 29th. And on the 29th, after 24 Hours of Peace ends at 6 p.m., we're going to jump off the Mad-ism cipher. We got Punchline Academy, Sirius XM, Shade 45 as partners. And we're going to be looking for other, partnerships in the cannabis world, but not just cannabis. Health and wellness, of course, is always a part of what we do. So if you got any health and wellness brands, clothing, merchandise, any food, get at me. Let's talk about it. You have a presence at the Mad-ism cipher, which will be the official after party for 24 Hours of Peace. And of course, we do vendors at 24 Hours of Peace. We have 150 vendors out there every year, at least, we want to include what you got going on at this year's 24 Hours of Peace. So make sure you lock in with us. That said, let me send you over here to madisminc.com so you can see what it is over there. It's everything Mad-ism, everything Hakim Green, the official website of Hakim Green. So you can go to hakimgreeninc.com or you can go to madisminc.com. It takes you to the same place. We got the shop, which is where we do our Mad-ism paraphernalia. All we do is spark Mad-ism. Big shout out to Cool Brands. Big shout out to Higher Frequency. Big shout out to everybody that's a part of the Mad-ism team. All we do is spark Mad-ism, t-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies. We got the baseball tees. We got the muscle shirts. We got the whole gamut. Go over there, man. Represent. Hit me up. Cop something. Don't sell your ass. Have integrity. Morals, values is important in this world we live in. So we want to push that as well. Just go over to madisminc.com once we finish with this live stream and check in with us and see if you can cop something, Going over there and represent for your boy. Yeah. So we got a phenomenal show lined up for you. I got a very good friend of mine, old school friend. I call him family. My brother DJ Davey D. Cook, who's a journalist, DJ, educator, originally from the BX, currently representing the Bay Area. He's been in the Bay Area for quite a while, representing real hip hop in all its different forms. He's going to be on at 9 o'clock, so we can do a deep dive into his personal history, as well as the passing of Clive Davis and what that legendary music industry figure has meant to the music business, to the I don't want to say the culture. I don't want to say that. because when we say the culture, we mean hip hop culture. And though he is responsible for, of course, a Bad Boy Entertainment, after Puffy left Motown, or not Motown, excuse me, Uptown, working for Andre Harrell, Clive Davis gave Puffy his first deal, Bad Boy, its first deal, and that's how we got the Notorious B.I.G. after we got Craig Mack and everything else that followed. We're gonna talk about some of that stuff. But just as a music business mind, a music industry mogul, Clive Davis has been around since the '60s, and he has a long list of phenomenal artists that's just not hip hop artists. Most of his artists actually were not hip hop artists. Whitney Houston probably being the biggest artist in his personal roster, and so we're going to discuss what his death means to the music industry. And then that's going to be a very interesting conversation. So share this stream, like, subscribe if you're over on YouTube. If you're on Facebook, like, follow Hakim Green. If you're on IG, let folks know what we got going on over here. Follow the Hakim Green page so you can get this content on the regular. We do the Hakim Green Show every week on Wednesday nights. I try to have a guest lined up. But if not, we do current events. We do what's happening in the world of not just hip hop, but politics and American culture, world culture, global culture. And as promised, I got to talk about the Knicks. Got to talk about the New York Knicks, who brought a championship home after 53 years to New York City. Madison Square Garden is considered the Mecca of basketball. It's considered the Mecca and hasn't seen a championship in 53 years. And though I'm not a Knicks fan per se, it does feel good to see all my friends who are Knicks fans be able to celebrate a championship. I really appreciate Jalen Brunson and what he brings to the game of basketball, his leadership, his style of play, very well skilled. Him being the face of the New York Knicks, I think is very much apropos. I think he represents his leadership status in the right way. But of course, you got Karl Anthony Towns, another Jersey native, as well as Jalen Brunson, Jersey native. You got Josh Hart. You got Mikal Bridges. You got OG Anunoby. You got Alvarado, who's from BK, Brooklyn, no doubt. All those guys on the New York Knicks, man, they did their thing, and I'm happy to see them be able to celebrate this championship. There was some controversy when the current president of the United States, number 47, showed up for Game 3. The Knicks went 2-0 in San Antonio. They were visiting teams to start the series, beat the San Antonio Spurs 2 games in a row. And we were hoping for a sweep. Got to New York. Donald Trump shows up, and the New York Knicks lose. And Donald Trump came and brought that whack juice to the Garden and shut out the New York fandom. The thousands of people show up for these New York Knicks games to represent, support their team. They weren't allowed to support and represent. And that was sad to see because the president was in the building. The security was tight, stepped up. There were a lot of limitations put on access to the game. Price of the tickets skyrocketed because the president was in the building. Championship tickets are already astronomical and unaffordable for the average fan. But to have, number 47 in the building kind of made things really difficult. It was just a bad look. And I think that bad look carried over to the play of the New York Knicks that game. And they caught that L. But they still, carried a gentleman's sweep, beat the San Antonio Spurs in a game, came out with that chip. And, as tradition would have it, when teams win championships on the professional level, be it, basketball, football, baseball, WNBA, and the like, they usually get offered to be celebrated by the current president, whoever's sitting in the White House. And we always love to see these teams go see Barack Obama when he was in the White House. That was always a treat, a really good look. But with Donald Trump being number 47, he was number 45, and we've seen athletes decline the visit to go see Trump when he was president the first time around. This time around, there's some controversy about the New York Knicks actually participating in the White House visit James Dolan, the owner of the New York Knicks and in Madison Square Garden, MSG Network, he and Trump are very, very good friends. And that's probably why Donald Trump was actually in the building for the game. But he's already accepted the invitation to bring the Knicks to the White House for their traditional visit. But there's some question as to whether the team is going to show up. And that's going to be interesting to see. A lot of the folks in the fan world are saying that the Knicks probably won't show up, that we're hoping that they don't show up, that they decline the visit. We know that the politics for, I would say, most of the team is not in line with Donald Trump's politics. But I do know Mitchell Robinson is a Trump supporter. So that's going to be it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. You know, the Whoopi Goldberg on The View, she was encouraging the Knicks to show up, the team to show up, just to show that, you know, these players of color, black players, Alvarado's a Puerto Rican, what's his name? Landry Shamet. I don't know what his nationality is, but men of color, she was encouraging them to go to the White House, to be honored, to be saluted. You know, but I'm like, man, you know, he gonna feed him some McDonald's and shit. You know what I mean? And, you know, he gonna fucking, I mean, like, you know how this guy get down, yo. You know, how my brother Myron Clifton say, it's the white trashification of the White House. You know, it's real ghetto over there. You see what they did to the White House lawn with this UFC 250 event. They ripped up the lawn. You see what they did to the reflecting pool. That's all dysfunctional now. And you see what he did by tearing down the east wing of the White House, trying to get this ballroom that he's been begging the nation to pay for. Got the White House looking real ghetto. Looks real like project-like over there. Right? You know what I mean? So it's like the New York Knicks showing up to the White House. It ain't even like a big deal right now. It's not like, you know, you going somewhere with, it's an eyesore. Shit looks crazy. You know, this guy running around. And it's like stories, I don't know if you caught wind of the stories coming out that, you know, he and Melania don't sleep together, which, you know, that doesn't surprise me. That Melania has, I guess, the master bedroom, and they made a living quarters out of, like, I guess what's considered the living room area in the White House for Donald Trump. And he's like done his own decorations and ghettofied that shit out the. So dude likes wall-to-wall carpeting. He wants carpeting everywhere, even in the bathrooms. Now, I've never been anywhere where there was carpet in the bathroom. This dude literally has carpet throughout his bathroom. And there's like stories of the White House staff switching out the carpet like every day or so because, you know, you get out the shower, you're walking around, dripping wet, smelling all fucking nasty and shit, and probably the fucking wet dog smellers all through the motherfucking, you know what I mean? Got that shit looking all, smelling all raggedy. So they got to switch out the carpet every other day, dry it out, blow dry the motherfucker out, lay it back down and shit. Shit is crazy over there. So, you know, showing up to the White House these days isn't what it used to be, you know? And so it's going to be interesting to see what the Knicks do, the New York Knicks do. And, you know, it's going to be interesting. You know, I'm encouraging them not to show up, especially those of the Knicks who don't share the same politics as Donald Trump. I know Mitchell Robinson apparently is a Trumper. He's down with the get down. That's on him. You know, you do what you like. But, you know, for the rest of the squad, it would be nice to see them take a stance, stand on business, and not show up, do something else with their time. Maybe take a trip to the Obama Library in Chicago. You know, that'll be kind of dope. Maybe Obama should send an invitation to the New York Knicks to come meet him at the Obama Library Museum out in Chicago and make that a whole media affair. That'll be dope. We'll see how that lands. But yeah, you know, I thought I'd talk about that. You know, we got Madison Sports. Usually every Tuesdays, we're actually on hiatus, but we will be doing a special NBA draft show tomorrow night at 7 p.m. over here on the Madism channel, Hakeem Green platform on IG, and the Madism platform on Facebook. Going to talk about the last 2 days with the NBA draft. You know, expectations going forward with these new recruits joining their prospective teams. There's some big names going to some places that you know, should have some impact, and you know, we want to see how that pans out. So we're gonna talk about that tomorrow at 7 p.m. on Madism Sports, and then that will probably be the last show for the summer, and then we'll pick back up at the top of football season. Maybe do a you know, maybe a special show during preseason just to get it right. And also as a reminder, 24 hours apiece going down August 28th, August 29th, 24 hours straight from 6 p.m. on Friday to 6 p.m. on Saturday. We got the ill lineup. We got some, you know, I'm just going, you know, I probably shouldn't do this, but I'm just going to go ahead and put it out there. We got Memphis Bleak is coming through. We got Freeway is coming through. We got, you know, I'm going to keep it right there. Well, no, we're doing a special tribute to the mixtape culture. You know, me coming up in the 80s and the 90s in hip hop, the mixtape was extremely important to how music was disseminated. And the mixtape was like, you know, it was so many mixtape DJs who had it popping. Everybody from Clue to Green Lantern. Kid Capri, of course, is one of the most legendary mixtape cats out there. But this year, we're going to do a special tribute to mixtape culture. And we have DJ Ron G and DJ Doo-Wop going to come through and do a special DJ exhibition celebrating and honoring mixtape culture. So be on the lookout for that. I see some folks just popped in the building, man. Please like, share, subscribe. Let folks know what we're doing. We got Davey D coming on in a few. We're going to talk about his history in hip-hop culture as a DJ, educator, and the like, historian. And we're going to talk about Clive Davis in a few and his impact on the culture. Now, real quick, I got some folks out there in the building. You know, give me something that I should talk about, you know, just so I can kind of eat up some time until Davey D gets in the building. What would you like for me to discuss real quick? Let me know in the chat, and I'll put it up, and we'll discuss it. Let me see what we got going on over on Instagram. Got Prince Cannon. What up, what up, what up? Peace, peace, peace. Got Funny Money Bags in the building. Weekly Rap Gods. Salute to everybody out there. I appreciate you tuning in over on Instagram. But, you know, anybody over on YouTube or Facebook that's checking in, let me know what I should be talking about, and I will get it in. Slim Sinatra, what up, my brother? I see you. How about them Knicks? Just got finished talking about the New York Knicks getting that chip. I saw you out in the New York streets at the parade. I see you, homeboy. That's my family, my brother Slim, always representing for the Hakim Green Show and Madism. Salute to him. Let me see what's up with Davey D. Yeah, man. So you know what? You know, let me do this real quick. Let me throw up this video. It's another single off the Hakim Green Show, Music and Culture. And it's called Reckless, produced by Ron Lawrence. Ron Lawrence produced Hypnotized for Biggie. He produced Where I'm From for Jay, Money, Power, Respect for the Lox. He produced Love Like This for Faith Evans. What up, Rodney? I see you, my G. Peace, peace, peace. Yeah, you know what it is. So I got this joint called Reckless. I'm going to throw that up right fast while we wait for the legendary Davey D pop in the building. Put down the gun. Let's go.
Any place, anytime, anyone can get it. Mustache, gap, pills of water when I wet it. I owe niggas shots like doctors paid on credit. The white good K kid who wanna catch it. Nigga claim gangsta, let me see him rep it. Dog want a bone, come fight or fetch it. It's hectic. We caught him heading for the exit. Cat straight pussy, hold spot like a leopard. I come with crook and flail the flock, need a shepherd. Hang with hooks and nails, the Glock, spray like pepper. Clear out the block, then moving like a settler. Chop down trees, make it rain like the weather. They call me King of Rock, I'm tougher than leather. With the heavy clip, trigger light as a feather. With the HK, I'm like Koch with the heckler. Play my pawns like chess, this ain't checkers, I'm reckless. And you caught up in the Nexus. New Jersey drive, my dude about the Lexus. Gun real big like I get them shits from Texas. Hollow tip, hollow out, core, solo plexus. My nigga reckless, he's living reckless. Snatch your itch hill, snatch your necklace, a hooligan and wretched. Outcast like a leper. Nightfall hit, he get it quick like a leopard. In the jungle, makes you humble. Where seas don't wave and bees don't fumble. Put up, player, I hear it off and tumble. I suggest y'all niggas step before y'all niggas stumble. Any place, anytime, anyone can do it. Putting bodies in the casket, family's gonna view it. Mother carried flowers, father never knew it. Wasn't there to raise the baby, and the block won't excuse it. YG claimed blood, OG said prove it. Try to push weight, but little nigga couldn't move it. First he starts to use it, then he starts to lose it. Now blood on his door like the little nigga Jewish. Caught up on the block, twisted like a Rubik's. Bricks weighing grams, caskets measure cubits. Bodies keep dropping, families going through it. Brothers on the run like Jesse, you can do it. Living fast and furious with guns in the Buick. Everybody stick them up, and I ain't trying to glue it. Lawyers out to sue it. The courts won't excuse it. Black body in the chair, and the judge said executed. Think this shit is glorious? My nigga, don't be stupid. Mother broken hearted, but the shooter wasn't Cupid. Evil goes around like the devil chopped his fooded. 3-6 mafia like Bishop started juicing. My nigga reckless, he's living reckless. Snatch your itch hill, snatch your necklace, a hooligan and wretched. I'm cast like a leper. Nightfall hit, he get it quick like a leopard. In the jungle, makes you humble. Where seas don't wave and bees don't fumble. What up, player? I hear it off and tumble. I suggest y'all niggas step before y'all niggas stumble.
Yeah, Rodney says talk about LA hip hop culture, especially the beginning of LA hip hop culture. Great suggestion, Rod. I appreciate that. So, you know, I grew up in East Orange, New Jersey. Was born in 1969. I came up in the 70s. And, you know, coming up in my generation, America was very regional in terms of cultural aesthetic. In terms of the fashion, the way we dressed, the music we listened to, you know, the things that we were into outside of sports, of course, was very particular to the region you grew up with. Even in terms of New Jersey and New York, you know, East Orange, New Jersey is North Jersey, East Orange, Newark, Orange, Montclair, you know, Essex County, Bergen County, Hudson County. The styles were different than New York. Like you could tell a New York cat from a Jersey cat. You know, you could tell an East Orange cat from a Newark cat. Like it was different. The way we styled our hair, the haircuts we wore, the way we wore our clothes, the types of things we wore. And then coming up through like the late 70s, early 80s, that New York hip hop culture kind of really spread across the tri-state area all the way down to probably Philly out towards Connecticut. The radio stations, 98.7 KISS FM. Well, first it was BLS, and then 98.7 KISS FM. You had Mr. Magic Rap Attack on BLS, and then you had Cool DJ Red Alert over at KISS FM. And, you know, for for North Jersey, you know, that was kind of our influence musically. And it was pretty much just the radio, mixtapes as well. But the radio kind of was our window to hip hop culture. It was like through the radio. There was no internet. That was non-existent. You didn't really see Black people on TV at all. If you did see Black people on TV, you saw Black people as criminals, thugs, pimps, pushers, hustlers. Like youth culture wasn't really the focal point on mainstream television. You only had like 5 channels too. You had channel 2, channel 4, channel 5, channel 9, channel 11, channel 13. You know, but you didn't really get to see culture to be influenced by it. So I say all that to say, to even think about what was happening in LA was like a mystery. Like you didn't even really think about LA in terms of culture like that. Now that our guest is coming in, we can actually dig more into that conversation about West Coast culture. Let me see. I'm just waiting for his video to pop up. And then once we get his video on, I'll bring him in. Or maybe he doesn't want his video on. What up, my brother? You gonna do a video or you gonna stay like this?
No, I want to put the video on. Can you see me now?
Okay.
There we go.
There we go. There we go. Blue skies out there on the West Coast.
Well, you know what it is. We're about to go to the movies. And so in order to get to where I'm at, it's like an hour and a half drive with traffic. So we had to leave early, and then we had to get near enough to the studio because it's a special screening tonight.
Got you.
You see what I'm saying?
Well,
Yeah, you know.
Well, I appreciate you taking it. I appreciate you taking the time. You know,
it's all good. I'm glad to be on here.
Yeah, man. You know, with the passing of Clive Davis, I know we've had conversations about Clive Davis prior, but before we get into all of that, one of my viewers had asked that we talk about LA hip hop culture. So right before you got on, I was trying to just talk a little bit about, you know, my take on LA hip hop culture coming up through the 80s and how being so far removed from LA in the 80s and not having the technology to really, you know, put us in touch with what was really going down on the grassroots level. You know, we didn't really get to understand West Coast, be it LA or Bay Area hip hop till much later to even understand what was going on. So it's kind of perfect that you hop in when you did, you being originally from the Bronx, but then moving out to the Bay Area. What year did you actually touch down in the Bay Area?
81.
Oh, so yeah, you were early enough to really kind of experience the growth of hip hop culture from an early start out on the West Coast.
Well, both in the Bronx, where I'm from, Soundview, and both out here. And what I'll say is this: obviously, being from New York, you feel like the whole world is like New York, right? You didn't have YouTube, you didn't have any of the stuff that makes this world smaller. So you just figure, you know, and remember, I'm a teenager when I move out here. So it's not like I'm a grown man with language and historic perspective or anything like that. When I moved out here, a couple of things I saw, but I didn't really put it together. Folks didn't care about New York out here, at least in the Bay, you know, and when I was at school or went to Cal, the folks from LA weren't really tripping. It was more like I was used to going up and down the East Coast, you know, growing up, and it's really like, oh, New York. It'd be like, oh, what about Harlem? What about the Bronx? And, you know, there was a fascination with the Big Apple, right? Until you went to DC. And DC folks was kind of like, yeah, you know, we're Chocolate City. We're 80% Black. You know, we got our own thing jumping off. That was the only time I kind of experienced that type of non-enamored with of New York. When I moved out here, people were like, oh, yeah, New York. I have a cousin that's there. Anyway, you know, the sky's blue, water's wet, and they kept moving. Nobody really was tripping about that. And I say that because sometimes there's a perception that when you are coming from a place that has so much going on, you think the whole world is kind of had nothing to do and they're waiting for you to show up. Being in the Bay Area and in Cali folks experience that. They go up and down the West Coast to Seattle and you know, other cities, Arizona and, you know, Reno and Nevada, and they're like, we're here. As if people are like, oh, we've been waiting for you to come from LA to kind of show us what to do. And so I say this to say that now in retrospect, the Bay Area had a scene that was jumping off already. It had nothing to do with New York hip hop. Sure, there might have been a cousin who went back east and brought something with them and vice versa. But there was a funk culture out here. And if we had 4 or 5 member hip hop crews, and I was a part of a couple of crews growing up in the Bronx, you know, shout out to Total Death crew out of Carb City and the Avengers over in Marble Hill and the Promenade, right? There were our counterparts at 16, 17 who might have been in a band, you know, so it might have been the Alpha Omega band with Dwayne Wiggins, who later becomes, you know, in Raphael Sadiq, Tony. It might have been Al Eaton's band, right, who was Too Short's first producer, right? It might have been any number of people. They were in bands. So teenagers out here had funk bands. And those funk bands were in talent shows, right? And they had their own little TV network. They had the Jay Payton Show, and they had Soul Beat Television, right? So, you know, so this is before Soul Train or anything like that. And, you know, big shout out to Ralph McDaniels, because he said he was inspired to do his thing from the TV shows out here, you know, the TV networks out here. But what I'm saying is that they would have these talent shows. They were the equivalent to our block parties. And the two main people that participated in the talent shows were the funk bands and the dancers. So there was a dance culture out here that went up. Well, poppin' was down in LA. In the Bay, it was about boogaloo, roboting, and strutting, right? And so, you know, Richmond cats roboted, Oakland cats boogalooed, San Francisco cats strutted. And you could kind of tell who was who based upon how they moved, how they dressed. They were like, you know, there was overlap, but they were their own kind of, you know, in Frisco, we move like this. Oakland, we move like this. Richmond, we move, you know, and people prided themselves. They had dance crews. And you can look back and see like all these famous people that came out of it. But dance culture, along with the funk movement, was the primary conduits for Black self-expression out here in the Bay. And we're not talking about in 1980 after Beach Street or something like that. We're talking about going back to the 60s, all throughout the 70s. And then what was unique when New York hip hop emerged in terms of it being shown on TV, and you start to have Wild Style and Beach Street and things like that, the reaction to it was twofold. Cats from the hoods out here that had their own style and their own cultural expression reacted like, oh, y'all are doing that rhyming. Okay, that's kind of like the pimp talk my uncle does. Or, oh, okay, you kind of doing this. That reminds me of that, right? So they had seen something like that, but it wasn't exactly the same. So some people incorporated it, other people didn't. I remember early on there were folks just like, I ain't doing all that breakdancing stuff, getting on the ground, because this is a pimp culture out here.
Right.
And you don't want to get dirty like that. So you express yourself differently. Now, the other reaction was people who didn't necessarily have a deep-rooted cultural aesthetic. They were like enamored with what happened in New York. And so they were following that tooth and nail, like, oh man, I'm gonna go to these movies, I'm gonna listen to everything they're doing, I'm gonna copy that. And so you had a phenomenon by the mid 80s where there were some people who were locked in to what they saw and what they understood as New York's hip hop, who would accuse people from the hood of not being hip hop out here, right? It's like, man, you don't really know. And, you know, Cass is like, well, first of all, you must be young. You must be new to this. And we have a rich history. And I'll say one last thing. We had a first, second, and third generation of people, practitioners in the 70s, right? So let's take the Cool Herc class and the class that's around them, the Imperial JCs and the Marios and all those type of folks. Well, there was an equivalent to that. There was an equivalent to that in terms of the dancers. So you had cats who came out with boogaloo and had this, had a whole dance scene. And like their New York counterparts, by the time you get into the late 70s, they're like, man, I'm 18, I'm ready to bounce, I'm ready to move on. go to the army, go do something else.
Mhm.
And it's a younger generation that kind of picked up the mantle and they did things. So a younger generation that comes of age in the early 80s, they're the ones that's like, oh yeah, let me incorporate some of what I did in the past, you know, my older brothers or uncles with what is now new, which is the hip hop thing. And, you know, a lot of people dropped the bands, got into DJ culture and all that. And even with the DJing, there's a whole vibrant scene of, you know, folks building their speakers and having sound clashes and all that that go back into the 70s as well. So if I can conclude, is that if you look at each city around the country, you'll find that there are similar dynamics. You know, what was going on in DC, 200 miles from where we're at in New York? Go-Go, right? They're celebrating their 50th year. I don't think the cats, and I know so because I was in DC a lot with tournaments, none of them cats was going, oh, we have nothing to do, Hakeem. Let's wait for New York to show us, right?
Yeah.
They was like, they were knee deep into their own expression, some of that overlap. Some of the things they like, oh, I like that flavor. I'll put a little bit of rhyming here.
Yeah.
And us, vice versa, we took some of their songs and made them into breakbeats.
Yeah. Well, you know, I had a Ron Lawrence, who's from Queens, but you know, of course, he went to Howard University. But he talks about how working with Herbie early in the '80s with Salt and Pepper and Kid and Play, how that influence of go-go on them. When you hear that mesh of go-go with hip hop, introducing go-go to a lot of New Yorkers and tri-state area cats, you know, early on. So that even though, you know, go-go's a DC thing, it's still like there was an exchange of culture that I don't think gets recognized enough. When we kind of think of, you know, New York as being so anti everybody else. And it really wasn't like that. And me being a Jersey cat, for instance, you know, if anybody gets beat up or treated like, you know, the little brother is people from Jersey. But then you have Sugar Hill Records, which is a record label from Jersey. And Zoe Robinson and her husband being from Joey Robinson being from Harlem, coming to Jersey. But the first big rap record, you know, commercial rap records, Rap at the Light, and those cats was from Jersey. So there was always like some type of an exchange and share of culture for those of us who were able to travel and get around.
And remember, you know, Jersey was the little brother until you went to Newark. And people was like, oh, that's the sixth borough. Why? Because Newark was filled with black folks. Yeah. And you just didn't roll up there talking about, well, we running things, just like you didn't go to Staten Island. A lot of people went and said, we running things, and then found out that you didn't, right? Exactly. And so here's the deal with that. Black folks who are part of the African diaspora and indigenous folks, right, from all around, have a sacred relationship with the drum. We are people of the drum.
Yes.
We are, and with the drum comes an oral tradition. And with that oral tradition comes a dance or movement tradition. When I say tradition, we're talking about moving away from the notion of entertainment and understanding, like, here, for example, my kids, you know, they're going through their rites of passage and they got to get a drum, right? And so, you know, their drum is like, you know, they're down in Texas and their uncle got to go get a deer because it's got to be made with a deer hide, and the hide got to be blessed. And, you know, it's a whole process. You just don't get the drum. You got to have a certain type of wood, all this stuff. Now, if you hear the drums that they do coming out of indigenous culture, you're not going to be like, turn that drum off. Just like none of them folks would be, turn that, what you call it, boom bap off, right? You just go, oh, that's a different flavor. So you get with the flavor and you get it. Go-go was much slower than most of the breakbeats we had in New York. But nobody was going, oh, I can't stand that. It was like, oh, I like this. It's just different than what I do. And when I came out west, the funk was really rooted around, you know, Larry Graham's thumping on the bass, right? Okay. And so I remember Too Short said something to me a long time ago that was interesting. He said, look, he said, back east, funk is based around the drums, right? So you all are real deep into those percussion. So it might be Latin percussion, might be black percussion, you know, but it's all about the drums, right? And that's what's carrying the day. He goes out here, it's the funky bass line, right? Where you're thumping. So, you know, obviously when I moved out there and I heard this music and I go, well, this is not music that I'm used to hearing. I mean, I heard the Barcades, you know, because of Holy Ghost, but I didn't hear all these album cuts that they were jamming to, or Can Function, you know, or the Commodores. We knew a couple of breakbeats, but these folks have knee deep in these albums with stuff with, you know, the party's going crazy. So, you know, me being there, I wasn't folding my arms in a corner going, oh, this is not my thing. It's like, no, this is kind of funky. It's just a different vibe, a different rhythm, but it's still the drum.
You know, I think means a great deal for appreciating other forms of music is going to the environment in which created that style of music. Like, you know, when you go to Atlanta and you see how when you go to Miami and you see how Miami gets down, when you go to Houston and you see how the people themselves express themselves with the music, it helps you appreciate. You go, it's like, oh, now I get it. Now I understand it. And, you know, just having regional music and regional sound, and then the erasure of regional music, I think has been such a huge detriment to the progress of our culture, where everything has to sound alike. That's not a good thing.
Well, here's a funny thing. When I moved out here, New York was going through a metamorphosis in terms of disco, right? So you had your John Travolta disco, and then you had what we called at that time black disco. And black disco became, it's stuff that you would hear with Larry Levan in the garage, or Zanzibar later on, right? It was a funky type of, like, you know, make you squint your face, like, ooh, like, you know, put that BG stuff away and give me more of this brass construction, or, you know what I mean? Or, you know, I mean, it was.
So give me some, some Gwen Guthrie.
Gwen Guthrie, or 10%, and Colonel Abrams, and all that, right?
Right.
So when I moved out here, and there were cats that came from, you know, New York and Boston that were trying to introduce us to house. And I started playing, you know, what would eventually become house. People out here was like, I don't know, man. They associated it with stuff that was coming out of San Francisco and the disco movement, right? Until there was a national convention out here. And I remember I was DJing, this thing had to be 84, 85. And I played Set It Off. Had to be about 1,000 people. It was at the, it had to be like 86, 87, because Set It Off came out there.
83, 84.
Yeah, but I'm talking about when we played it out here, you know, with Strafe on the yellow label. And they saw 1,000 people go crazy. And that's when it hit folks like, oh, okay, now I get it. Because up to that point, it was like, nah, you know, this music is a black music form. It's like, yeah, not out here, until they saw it. And now, you know, house is a big part of everybody's repertoire. You know, you play it without thinking a second thought. So to your point, yeah, when you go to certain places, then it makes sense. So the hyphy movement out here, people are like, I don't know why they're wearing stunner shades and they're shaking their dreads, until you're out here and go, oh, I get it. Or you go to LA and it kind of has that whole G-funk thing. You don't get it until you at a party where they're playing that boogie, that funk boogie. And, you know, and then you realize, like, okay, that's the rhythm here. That's the vibe. That's the energy. And that's a beautiful thing. I don't want everybody to sound like they're from New York. I don't want everybody to sound like they're from Cali. I want to go to different places and see how folks get down. And to your point, the regionalism, was beautiful because it was based upon the environment. It was based upon the demographics that was around you. And a lot of things contributed to particular sounds.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you know, I don't know when I first met you, but I know you were over at KML.
KML,
yeah. And that station, that was so important to the expansion of hip hop and most New Yorkers, most people around the country don't really understand how important that operation was. Can you talk about your history there and how important it was for representing real hip hop?
So KMEL started out as a rock station, and then it morphed into a, we call it Latin freestyle now, but it was called beat music then, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nasera and all that, right? That up tempo, Latin. What was it?
Freestyle. I call it freestyle.
Yeah, freestyle and all that.
Freestyle, yeah.
But there was a guy named Keith Knafley, who was a young program director, who listened to many of our shows on college radio, right? So he was aware that there was a whole movement there. And then there was a cat named Alex Mejia, who was a mixer on KMEL. And he's the one that brought us all in. He was like, oh, Dave is doing a show on this college station, Sway and King Tech are around, you need to get them. And he brought all of us in to the station. Now, in most radio stations, they're like, here's the script, you follow it. But Keith was like, tell me what you all like doing, right? What's popping for y'all. And so he gave us a lot of free reign to do what was at that time unheard of on commercial radio. So we're talking about 90, 91, 92, 93, 94. We were, we were doing what you were out there, Gangsta in the morning.
A little later.
But it was definitely, us doing
what. It was actually the precursor to what Hot 97 became.
Well, I can even tell you the stories on that, with the phone calls that were made and people wanting to pick up the format and all this sort of stuff. Because what we did was we figured, well, first of all, there were several things going on. This is a large area of people of color, right? And it has large Asian populations and large brown populations that for the most part culturally lean Black. And so when we played this type of music, you didn't have any alienation. You had people just locking in. And when it came time to sell advertisement, the way that these ad companies were like, well, what's your demographic? And they would look and go, oh, wow, you got a lot of white listeners. Well, we did, but we didn't. We had a lot of Asian listeners who were bucketed as white in terms of ratings. And so you just didn't say anything. It's like, yeah, we're number one in this demographic. We're number one in that. And so that allowed us to continue down that path unheeded, whereas our urban stations were saddled with, I don't know if we really want that demographic and that audience. And, I felt they could afford it. They didn't fight it. They didn't give us any chances as youngsters coming up. KMEL did. And the rest is history. I mean, the Wake Up Show comes out of that. And I think you also had a lot of people who were producing, a lot of people who were in the culture, not just DJs, but they were active participants. And people were also very smart. So I'll give you an example. I always like to tell the story that what happened with King Tech. When he was brought into a meeting, our boss drew a circle on the board and he said, you see this little dot here? That's you and what you all are doing. This circle here is the rest of the listeners. And so we have to appeal to the rest of the listeners. Right. And Tech goes, can I get the marker? And he starts drawing a line, from the little dot throughout the circle. He goes, this is us. And this is the waves that we create. And we're impacting that larger audience, which, made them have to really relook and say, you know what? The things that you all are doing deserve prime time exposure. And so we were prime time. I was part of the morning show, #1 morning show, and, if you were out there, you heard nothing but hip hop in the morning, afternoon, and at night. And we did our thing. And I'll end with this. We were standing on the shoulders of KPOO 89.5, which is the major, only Black, non-commercial radio station west of the Rockies. So that was a huge juggernaut that we built upon. And then, of course, K-Day, down in LA, you know, with Greg Mack and, you know, and M-Walk and Tony G and all those guys that we could hear them on the AM signal bouncing all the way up here to the Bay. So nothing happens in a vacuum. Of course, we brought our own flavor, but we weren't operating without any other influences and vice versa.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's important that people know that, again, you guys were the precursor to Hot 97. There was a Steve Smith, I guess, started with you guys, and it came to New York and bought that format. No, get that wrong?
So there was a Hot 97 in San Jose.
I got you.
And Steve Smith was on that Hot 97. So here's a little story. That Hot 97 in San Jose, which is actually the largest city in the Bay. It's larger than San Francisco. It's the biggest city and it has the most population, gateway to Silicon Valley. They were playing freestyle, had a huge Latino population, huge Asian population. There was a guy there named Ray Lum, may rest in peace. He was a DJ on that station and he would hear us, you know, doing all this hip hop stuff, you know, in our mix shows. And he decided he wanted to do the same because that was what was popping all over the Bay. And he tells the story that he got called into a meeting and his program director, Steve Smith at the time was the assistant program director, but it was a guy named Newman, told him, we don't play all that rap crap, none of that black rap crap, you know? So Ray goes back the next week and he plays it and he gets brought back into the meeting and he's told, I told you not to play that black rap crap. So he knocks out the program director and he tells Steve not them smooth out and tells, he tells,
he knocked him out, physically knocked him out.
Yeah. Ray, you know, Ray Lum.
Just, you know, hold on a second. The reason why this is so important, right? Because when we look at where rap music is today, and I try to impress upon people that folks literally had to knock down doors in order to get the mainstream airwaves, to get the massive audience that hip hop now enjoys, wasn't just readily available for these. That's all right. That's
no. Yeah. Well, I'll give you another story to that. But anyway, Ray then turns to Steve Smith and goes, you can get knocked out too. And then he realizes that he was kind of on parole or something. So he bounces out of town and he's gone for a number of years. He comes back to the Bay. I guess he had bounced over to Vegas and he came back as a magician. And he heard us at a meeting. There was there was a conference on Asians in hip hop or something like that. And so it was a packed house and he heard people talking about the influence of Hot 97. And when he heard the name Steve Smith, that's when he was like Steve Smith, Hot 97, Steve Smith? And people didn't understand. It's like, yeah, New York. He's like, no, I'm talking about San Jose, Steve Smith, and, you know, long hair and this, that, and the third. And it's like, yep. And that's when he told everybody the story at the conference, you know, like he had, you know, threatened and he did knock somebody out. And he was like, I can't believe he's running the station because them cats didn't like hip hop at all, you know? So he broke all that down and, you know, there's like, you know, 500-600 people at that conference. So they remember that story. I mean, I'm not making it up. But to your point, yeah, folks had to take up space. Folks had to, you know, bogart their way in. Our college show, which we did way before we got on KML, so we're talking about going back to the mid 80s, was started by a brother named Matty Prep, who was from LA. And they didn't want him to do the show more than a year. He had to show up and he had to pull out the gap and let people know that we're going to do this show. And it caused a ruckus and it went all the way to the state capitol where they had to mandate that show be on the air. And, you know, Stanford has their own battles. That's where Kevin Kev and those guys were at. And same thing with San Jose State. So, yeah, a lot of people did more than kick down doors. They had to be like, you know, this is what we're going to do and we ain't leaving, you know, and, you know, doors open that way.
And it's also important for folks to know that these, this is the West Coast. This is San Jose. This is the Bay Area. These are places outside of New York City who are pushing the envelope for hip hop to, for Steve to then go to New York City, and it was, Hot 103 first, and then later Hot 97. Like, that didn't start in New York. Of course, you had Kiss FM, you had Mr. Magic, you had Red Alert, BLS. But in terms of 24-hour hip hop programming, straight like that, no, that was created elsewhere. That didn't start.
Well, here's the deal. So your BLSs and Kiss, they were doing mix shows, right? Before we were doing those things.
Weekends.
The beauty of the beauty of KML is that it was a crossover station. It was a massive #1, huge crossover station that figured out how to, basically play the music and still maintain its ratings and get its advertising dollars. And there was a huge showdown at the Gavin convention. If you read Dan Charnas's book, The Big Payback, he talks about going to the Gavin convention where all these hip hop artists like Souls of Mischief and everybody, they start freestyling in the lobby and, and start, taking over. And I joke with him because right upstairs, and I was at this meeting, was a big tense confrontation between pop music program directors, primarily on the West Coast, and urban, radio folks. The urban folks, who came from Kiss, I think it was like people like Tony Gray and others, they were like, look, y'all are playing 95% black music, but you are considering yourself a crossover station. And as a crossover station, that meant you got a big advertising budget. Record labels gave you, they had a budget for you that's way different than their urban counterparts. And it's like, we're playing this music and y'all are, getting over what we break. The argument from the pop stations is like, well, y'all don't play hip hop, y'all. We do. Hip hop is crossover now. It's pop music. And so we're doing this. And then the argument was, well, we can't play that because we get stigmatized. And the pop stations, well, that's not our problem. We figured out how to make it work. And so there was this back and forth, and the urban stations wanted to create a situation where these crossover stations would change their name and not be crossover, but would be, considered urban. And so the compromise is not, we're not urban, we're churban, right? Right. And it was a tense situation. Folks are ready to kind of go head to head, And I think that was the last time the black programmers came to Gavin, and they just started going to Urban Network.
Yeah.
But that doubled down for our station to go even harder in the paint, right? Yeah. It was like we're gonna go hard in the paint, and we're gonna take this to whatever levels we can. So let's get all the college radio cats, let's get all the people that are out there, doing this thing, and let's put them on these airwaves and let them do their thing. So that's where that whole thing was. That's what that whole thing was about at the end of the day.
Got you. So I know we're short of time, so I'm kind of gonna speed through this. I want you to talk, briefly about Davey D's Hip Hop Corner, right fast, how that came about, what the purpose was, and how important that was to the culture, mind you.
So the Hip Hop Corner was a newsletter, which ironically, let me just say this: history is not linear. It's cylindrical, right? Things can be happening at the same time without others knowing. So I'm sitting here doing a show on college radio, and I want to start advertising the show. Rather than make a flyer, I decided to make a chart of what I was playing, and then underneath the chart, put a little blurb about some of the songs that were happening. And at that time, we were playing a lot of Miami bass, and my format was Miami bass, early hip hop, and freestyle. That became the newsletter, Davey D's Beat Report. Around the same time, unbeknownst to me, there were a bunch of people out of Boston and Harvard who put out a little newsletter that newsletter went on to become the source, right?
Magazine.
One had nothing to do with the other, but it's just that I think people were coming of age and being like, how can we take this thing that we love and expose it to a larger audience? For me, I started looking on the back of record labels, and if I saw an address, I would use the school's mailing system and send you a chart of the Davey DB report. And I think at one point I had maybe 700 to 800 people on that list. That's how I met Chuck D. That's how I met KRS. That's how I met everybody, was that newsletter. It was information. I met a lot of folks, and a lot of folks got deals off that. I'm not going to give a whole list, but, you know, became a very important piece of information. Later, all of us from KVSU, Stanford's College Station, KPOO, and the other college station, San Jose State, we all met at my house, and we decided to form the Bay Area Hip Hop Coalition. And we changed the Beat Report to the Bay Area Beat Report, and we took everybody's songs and we put that on a massive chart. And then we acted as one unit. So on Sundays, when most of those shows came on, the rule was if you came to the Bay, you had to do our show in the morning, you had to go to KPOO in the afternoon, and you had to end with Kevy Kev in the show at KVSU. If you skipped one show, then we weren't going to play you, you know? And so that unity opened up doors for everybody, and, you know, and it made a lot of noise. That's how I wound up getting hired to the station, you know, because the station was like, we like what you're doing. And it's like, okay, I could do a KML Beat Report. And so that's what we started doing, was the KML Beat Report. And, you know, the rest is history. You know, once I was in there, you know, you move, shake, and take advantage. And I was able to, you know, make a nice little career in radio, you know, well, I still do radio. So, you know, but that was the door opener, you know, was writing about what we were doing and being true to it. But it was really, the thing was, it wasn't just a Davey D thing. Sure, it started off, but it was all of us, you know, coming together and acting as one unit. And like I said, we that was the rule. If you went to one and didn't do the other, then it was. I'll tell you what, man. KPOO, which was, you know, the anchor, because they were 24/7 Black radio. Somebody decided not to do that. I think it was Def Jam decided, well, we don't need to do that. And KPOO shut it down, and Russell wound up flying all his artists out to San Francisco to go to 89.5 KPO to kind of, you know,
smooth it out.
Good.
Yeah.
Smooth it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, again, we're speeding through this. I just want you to briefly talk about your experience as a professor, as an educator, and how you bring hip hop into the classroom. I know you've had me present to your students a few times, and I think that's important in terms of hip hop knowledge, education, so forth and so on.
Well, the rule in hip hop is when the door is open, you take full advantage, right? And a sister named Donna Lisa, who I had helped when she was an undergrad, was a professor there, you know. The funk people, ironically, Ricky Vincent was the one who started the hip hop class at SF State. And then Donna Lisa took, you know, a couple of people took over, and then Donna Lisa was there, had me come in as a guest. She liked what I was doing. She goes, why don't you, you know, co-teach with me? So it's like, all right, now I could have been a celebrity co-teaching, but it was like, you know, like gave me up on things like, look, this is what you want to do. These are the classes you want to take. This is pedagogy, language you need to know, and woo, 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 and wah, wah, wah. And I did that. And I think one semester she got sick and I had to take over, which meant that it just ushered me in. And I've been there 15 years. So, you know, again, everybody looking out for each other. Yeah. And the rule of thumb was like, look, I'm a co-sign for you, but you got to bring your A game. Yeah. Right? You can't have people go, yo, is that your homie? You know, so I made sure.
Right.
Yeah, I made sure to learn everything, take the classes I need to do, and, you know, and get myself situated in there. And it's been a wonderful ride. But, you know, it's standing on the shoulders of each of us, you know, all of us looking out after each other and making sure when we got into any sort of position, we would represent. And one other thing we had as an advantage, we had Soul Beat Television. So big shout out to Chuck Brown Sr. who passed, and then Charles, not Chuck Brown.
Hey, Chuck Brown.
No.
Chuck Brown?
No, Chuck Brown. I'm thinking that's DC. Man, he's gonna smack me, but for messing up on the names.
Sorry,
But
blame the brain, not the heart. That's all.
Yeah. But Soul Beat played a big role, and then of course Dominic Prima, who was down in LA, had a TV show on NBC that won not one but two, but three Emmys, which was a hip hop show and a community show called Home Turf. Dominique is one of the sisters of Ras Baraka, who you know.
Oh, right, exactly. To promote 24 Hours of Peace, myself and Amiri went to do Sway's show, and he was like, "I know your sister," and I'm like, "I don't know what's going on. They got this secret language going on." It's like,
I got put up on game. She was major, and because she gave national exposure to a lot of these artists. She was real good at what she did. She's still good. She's on radio right now on KBLA and in LA, and was on Stevie Wonder's station for years.
Your boy Big Said is clowning you right now, right?
Yeah. Well, this is what happens when you don't pay your child support. Your kids come after you.
Exactly. Okay. So listen, you brought up.
But I'm sorry. Let's give Sed his flowers, because around the time that we were doing our newsletters, Sed had his newsletter. It was the industry report, and I think, and it wasn't like Sed. Yeah. It wasn't like Sed was sitting there going, "Oh, what's Dave doing? Let me copy." These are just things that I think intuitively we were doing. Like, how can we take what we're doing and leverage that so that it can work to our advantage? And I think when you look at it in its totality, all of us did stuff. All of us did stuff on the education tip. All of us did stuff community oriented, yourself and others included, Chris and others. I mean, these were things that we were trying to fill voids. We didn't have language for it, but we sure as hell filled the void and had impact from coast to coast.
I impress upon people all the time, hip hop is a culture. It's not just rap music. So we got to keep that in mind, that the way we utilize hip hop, be it, rapping, DJing, graffiti arts, fashion, business, education, so forth and so on. In the spirit of hip hop is why we do what we do. So I just want to put a pin in that, and I'm rushing through right now because we don't have Davey for a lot of time. There's so many topics I can build with the brother on, but you mentioned a very important name. So to transition to our next segment, our next conversation, I'm going to bring in the great Stevie Wonder and have him kind of intro this next conversation.
We're losing the best and we're keeping the worst. When you think about Clive, you think about the parties and celebrations that he had the nights before the Grammys. He would honor various artists. That's just a wonderful thing. I think that we need that energy. We really do.
A lot of artists, what do they get from a Clive Davis? I mean, what does that kind of a working relationship, what does it add to them? What does he bring to the table that helps the artist? He,
I think, gave them unconditional appreciation for their talent, for their gift. He would go through any windows, any doors, any places to get them heard. It wasn't about, well, we can't play them on this station, or we can't this. It was as the world should be. It should be color free. I think the worst thing about people in this world is that you let your vision blind you. And when I say that, we have so many examples of how people are doing that more and more. And this is why we have the divide, based on something that we really have no control over. But he, with having an appreciation for music, for talent, he could feel it. And he welcomed the greatness of those artists that he's discovered.
Okay, now, it's the great Stevie Wonder. And, I would not expect Stevie Wonder to, have anything negative to say about Clive Davis, not publicly anyway. no one person is all positive. No one person is all negative. However, you and I have discussed Clive Davis and his leadership in the theft of Black music, so to speak. When we look at the Harvard music study, the study on Black music that was commissioned by Clive when he was at Columbia at CBS in 1972, and we were put on the game by the great Bob Law, rest in peace, and how that think tank led the way for the theft of Black music. The Black music department, the urban music department, the churban music department, all these different titles that we see put on, essentially our resource to monetize it, to capitalize off of it. Clive and others like Clive kind of had a very strong hand in that. Because he passed away, there's a Jermaine Dupri, had some things to say about Clive needing to be honored by BET and by black folks. And, I'm just like, let
me say this. Let me say this because I don't have a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
The music business is one of relationships, and the theft of Black music and Black intellectual property and all that has been going on long before Clive.
Yes.
But we did a show yesterday where I did have my elders on, Ricky Vincent and others who have been in either in the industry or study it and been a part of this for a long time. And I want to quote them because they said, if there's anything about Clive, he really personified and really made nice the plantation that is the music industry. And they used that word very intentionally, talking about it as a plantation. And then they were able to go through. Because now we're talking about people that's like, I was friends with Gil Scott-Heron. This is what he had to say. Now, yes, Clyde did hire him first, but this is what Gil had to say about that, right? He wanted him to be the Black Bob Dylan. Here's what happened when Gamble and Huff were put on. So there were things that he did that you can definitely give him his flowers about. And I think when you're in the industry and it's a business of relationships, Stevie, I would expect him to have something good to say if his relationship was good, right? But would Phyllis Hyman have something to say, if she was still around? And, many others, definitely did not. But, he's the music industry. And he's put some people on, big shout out to somebody like a Larry Jackson, who came up under, Clive. And Larry was part of KML when he was 15 and now is heading up $1 billion company, right? You can't deny that.
That's right.
But to the degree that the music industry and its sharecroppingness has not changed is something that needs to be looked at. And lessons around what Clyde, whether intentional or not, upheld and came to personify along with other executives is something that we need to look at and understand. So when he did this, the Harvard report, when he had the Harvard report commission, it was really for how record companies who did really have a presence could have more of a presence in white communities, right? And, and part of it was, taking the best practices that we have and emulating them, making the music more palatable for not you or me, but for our counterparts in the other side of town. And, and insisting that, hey, maybe you shouldn't be as funky. Maybe you need to be doing a little bit more like this.
Can I also add how majors could control the market share? Because before this was created, independent Black record labels, not just Black record labels, but independent labels controlled the majority of the market. The big boys control the minority share of the market.
No. They figured out how to consolidate power. And I often tell people, read the book by Jerry Heller called Ruthless. And when you read it, there are two parts to the book. There's the part about NWA and all the salacious stuff that he experienced as their manager. But then he talks about the type of learnings that he learned from the Clive Davises and David Geffens and what their commitment was to control the music industry. He talks about it in the book. And in 2026, with our collective creative expression being a source of potential revenue, you know, a spiritual underpinning for all of us, and something that can really, you know, should really be able to elevate us. As they pointed out yesterday on the show, Black music has generated billions and billions, but you wouldn't know that by going to our neighborhoods. And in fact, if there's a formula to follow, it would be like if we had poor HAKIM Green or poor Davey D from the Bronx and HAKIM from, you know, whatever part of Jersey. If we can keep them in these conditions, their expression will be raw. It'll be untouched. It will be, you know, something that we will all love to, you know, hear the rawness of, you know, the raw anger of these ghetto kids, hear the raw anger or, you know, expression coming from them. And it's because, you know, in their minds, it's because we are dealing with oppression 24/7. So there's kind of like an incentive to keep you in a condition that will breed the type of cultural product that everybody makes billions off of and we don't.
Except for
you
us.
know,
Yeah.
except for us. And so I think for us, you know, rather than necessarily look at, you know, Clive as the demon, you know, and people have that opinion of him, I want to know, we should learn those lessons and be like, okay, how do we not be taken advantage of again? How do we institutionalize the way that him and his cadre institutionalized? That's what we should be doing at this point in time. And I think when Bob Law first talked to us about Clive, I think that's what he was emphasizing, that we have to build those institutions at this point in time. We have a responsibility to do that, and
So
and
just
not replicate the plantation type of dynamics
what
that
Chuck-
the music industry is, but to actually learn from that and say, well, damn, you had billions and you still kept people in this type of condition. Let's change those dynamics.
So when we sat with Bob Law and had that conversation, he bookended that conversation with, up front was the Civil Rights Movement in '67, Dr. King addressing the National Association of Black Broadcasters, thanking them for their involvement in pushing the civil rights, the achievements, the goals that were achieved during that time. They were instrumental in doing that. And then in '77, Farrakhan addressing the same group, going, you know, how do we lose our culture? How do we lose our, and in between that, you see this, you know, this think tank, this Harvard study on Black music. And then, you know, it's like that conversation was golden.
Yeah.
I can't find it anywhere, but
well, we talked a lot about that, and I brought up the thing with the Farrakhan record, you know, was like more music, less talk, 15 in a row, right? It was to silence those radio DJs, and you will have to come back on and talk a little bit more about the natural conversation. But in '67, it's a rare speech, and you can find it online. Why? Because I put it online. You can hear him speak it. But he's basically talking about the role that Black radio played, Jack the Rapper and, you know, and Purvis Spam and Georgia Woods and all these people who became mouthpieces for the civil rights movement in terms of they were able to amplify the messages. And when he gave this speech at NATRA, the plan for the people there at the National Association of Television and Radio Announcers was to next level it. And the following year, organized crime folks came there and shut it down. And then they put in what they now know as the Drake format, which was more music, less talk, and they basically silenced the radio DJ. And when Farrakhan gives a speech 10 years later, he's basically like, look, they figured out the formula. Let's get somebody who's just happy to be on the airwaves. So when he's on the airwaves, he's like, you know, can you get funky? Can you get down? Can you get dirty? You're talking about it that way versus going, oh, let me try to use this platform to elevate the people. Now, here's an interesting tidbit. I'm going to have to go. In 2006, 1 million people came out in LA, right? Mostly Latino, around immigration. And there was a movement all around the country when they were talking about trying to put a draconian bill in place. And it was those radio announcers on Spanish-speaking radio that followed the the blueprint from NATRA. They were shut down that year. Everybody was pulled back, put in a room, and like, yeah, that was cute. We're not doing that again, not on either airwaves, you know. And you know, and those are things we don't know. That, you know, once you get to a certain point, people either silence you, remove you, or
or worse,
pull you in the back room and be like, this is what's going down. And if you don't like it, then, you know, we can do this. And so there was a lot of folks that paid a heavy price. King's speech is absolutely incredible. If you ever get a chance to hear it, it is definitely one to do. And here's the crazy thing. Somebody stole my record of it and mailed it back to me with parts cut out. What? And so what is up online is the tape of what, you know, what was stolen with parts missing, but it's still a powerful speech.
Yeah. My brother, I appreciate you so much, man. We always have wonderful conversations when we're able to talk on and offline. And we got to have you back on so we can dig a little deeper.
Yeah, if I'm with the kids, so they're like, Daddy, we got to get to this screening.
Absolutely.
You know?
I do not want to get in the way of that. And I appreciate you for taking time, my brother.
And shout out to my other kid, Big Said, you know.
Yeah.
He's grown. He's grown now. You know.
Okay. All right,
Peace, my brother.
Yes, sir. Peace. Yeah, man. That's, you know, the phenomenal DJ Davey D, Cook, you know, and very knowledgeable brother, you know, hip hop to the core. And I say hip hop isn't what we do, it's how we do it. So whether he's DJing, whether he's, you know, teaching, whether he's being an activist or a journalist, he always brings the spirit of hip hop, peace, love, unity, safety, having fun, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. And with that said, this is this installment of the Hakim Green Show. I thank everybody for joining in, collecting these jewels that just got dropped. And Big Said, watch yourself. All right, y'all, I'm out. Peace.